Hey everyone, and welcome back to another special episode of the Skilled Personnel Network. We are meeting our consortium of speakers by L&D Companion, and I am delighted to introduce you to the wonderful Hatice Mehmet-Quirk. Hatice, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
My absolute pleasure. Well, I'd say I'm very, very honoured to have you on the consortium of speakers and to for everyone to get to know Omnia Health Group that bit more, because you're an amazing organisation. So thank you very, very much for that. What we're doing as part of these very special interviews is a get to know the speakers, Hattie. So what I'd like to do is introduce you to the wider audience. Tell us about yourself and why you got into doing what you're doing.
So I had a career change later on in life. I'd done the whole corporate world, worked together with my husband towards the end of my corporate career. We'd not long had a baby, working together, living together, and having a young child proved a bit testing. So I decided to sort of take a step back, sat at home for a couple of months and felt rather agitated with that situation. So following up to that, in the family and myself included, there'd been a few mental health challenges, and it really inspired me to find out more, look into the mental health industry as such. So it all just started with an introduction course at the local college. I did a 10-week course there, and then from there I joined the next level and the next level, and before I knew it, I was doing a degree. Doing the training itself, I thought was going to give me more questions, but actually more answers, but actually ended up posing more questions than answers about the industry itself. Hence why I've set up Omnia together with Mark, to almost plug in and fill in the gaps that I've found through the training and through our personal experience as well.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting, Hattie? Because I mean, in a previous life, when I managed healthcare recruitment teams, one of the areas that I used to manage, along with radiography, was social care. And what we often found was many of the social workers that we had working for us had an experience at some stage in their life around the well-being, the mental health aspect that got them into the work that they did. So, just hearing what you're saying to me is actually hugely consistent with people's experiences of why they get into this line of work, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it comes from a place of passion, because you know what it feels like, or you see other people going through that darkness, and you want to be able to support people to show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that was certainly my passion through it. But also, I mean, we spoke about this before we came on, or many a times previously we've spoken about it, the attitudes around mental health, people's viewpoints around it, the stigma around it, trying to break that down and be that support to somebody, and also showing them that there's an open door, that just because you're suffering, just because you feel low, just because you probably do feel hopeless, there are doors that you can knock on that will open with loving arms waiting for you on the opposite side, that will help you and support you get through that difficult time. And that's what that's where the passion came from, really.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the other things when we first started speaking about this, Hattie, that you've mentioned to me, that I think I'd really like to try and tackle as part of the L&D Companion, is getting people to think about mental health before the actual problems that they perceive or that they've got going on in their life, right? I mean, that's quite an important aspect of dealing with the stigma of mental health, is actually going that you could just start at any stage to understand before things get out of control, but worse.
Definitely, 100%, because there is an element of, again, the attitudes of today's world in terms of therapy, definitely of previous generations anyway. I think the upcoming generation is a little bit more open to mental health support and help. But there is this idea that if you go to therapy, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
When actually, if you go to therapy before you hit a crisis point, you will be able to maintain and balance your life, because let's call a spade a spade. Life itself is challenging, be it through bringing up children, working, running businesses, parents, other family members, trying to balance the gym, eating healthy, etc., all the different challenges that we face just doing everyday life. It can all feel a bit overwhelming. And definitely one of the things that we've tried to do with Omnia corporate training is exactly that, is educate people on what it looks like, what the impact may be on different life experiences. So for example, becoming a mum, becoming a dad, bereavement, financial stress, all these different things that will come upon people at any point in their life, the possible impact that that may have on a person's mental health, the possible way in which that they can help support themselves through that difficult time. And if those self-help tools don't help, then seeking support through group support, therapy, one-to-one support groups, so that you've got that avenue to just voice the difficulties and the stress that you're going through, to
Mhm.
appease the psychological distress.
Yeah. Do you know what? Hearing what you were saying there, Hattie, so thinking about the different generations. I mean, because what we're talking about with mental health, right, is its own pandemic. You know, what we've got is a
Mm,
scenario where we're living in a post-COVID world, and maybe some of the trauma associated with the pandemic still hasn't shown itself. I mean, I remember the first few months of the pandemic where it was all a bit new, and that lockdown had kicked in. There was something crazily the feeling of reset of your life around. But actually, once the prolonged aspects of the lockdown and the conditions and the things that we all had to deal with it. I'm not entirely sure that we're all over the post trauma of those sort of things, right? And each generation has different challenges, because we're talking about a global challenge here, right? Mental health is a global challenge, and it takes very different facets. So with Omnia Health and with the work you're doing, do you see that there's different aspects to the different generations and how you adopt, your treatment, your plans, your services?
definitely. There are people that come, as I said, the older generations, when they come forward, you can sense that reluctance, that feeling of shame of, oh my
Mm,
God, I've had therapy, right? And then that takes a little while to sort of break down and overcome. So treatment takes a little while longer for the person to see the benefits of their therapy, because they're working on that shame in the initial stage, which can be quite a hindrance, when actually there's no shame in coming to therapy. If anything, I mean, I'm going to be an advocate of it because I'm a therapist, but I think it's a form of bravery, being
yeah,
forward, coming forward and say, do you know what, I just need 50 minutes a week just to de-stress and download all of the things that are sitting on my chest and in my head, so that I can process them and find healthy ways to cope with them. That's a sign of bravery. Ignoring them and sort of burying your head under the pillow, they're not going to go away. Then you've got the opposite side, because I come across a lot of young people that come through for treatment, but yet they're then stigmatized with the older generation's attitudes that there's something wrong with them because they need therapy.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Almost like a seesaw, because the younger ones are more up for it, but their parents or their grandparents are sort of grimacing at the thought that, oh my God, you're going to therapy. and then vice versa, the older people are sort of feeling like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me because I need to go to therapy, rather than this balanced attitude that there isn't wrong with anyone when they come to therapy. They just need that safe space to offload.
Yeah, completely. And I think I'm looking forward to looking at this particular challenge as part of L&D Companion, Hattie, as to how we adapt to working with students and newly qualified radiographers who are, finding their feet in the early stages of their career, versus also dealing with, mid to senior leadership and people that have been in the working place for many, many years. So, one of the questions that comes up is, the often misunderstood and misrepresented word, which is resilience, right? And I think that resilience is going to be one that I think is going to feature a lot in discussion over our webinars, our sessions, because of the various ways it's misunderstood. From someone that's saying, oh, come on, you can get over this, you can deal with this, toughen up. That aspect of resilience versus the other aspect of resilience, which is equipping people to be able to deal with challenging circumstances, because our healthcare professionals will often be working in much more challenging and pressurized environments than the average employer, right? The average person. So, it'd be interesting to get your views on that, how we adapt the work that you're doing with Omnia Health to working with our healthcare professionals, radiographers, and other likes. You do a lot of work, Hattie, right, with the prison services. Is that correct? What have you? Yeah, what have you observed with the work that you've done so far? A lot of the groups that you've worked with.
Stigma is still a massive issue. There is still an organizational aspect that needs to come into it. It's almost like the left hand doesn't speak to the right hand clearly enough to be able to have the relevant support in place, so that these things certainly the mental health and well-being support can be seamless. At the moment, there's too much red tape to get through in order to get an initiative to the ground. And then you're still only touching a small group of people. Whereas if they were to remove the red tape, left hand speak to the right hand, everyone, educate each other on why this support is needed and necessary, the reach would be far more, and it would be breaking down that stigma. Because the truth of the matter is, anyone that's experienced trauma in their life, right, and we've all experienced trauma, you've just mentioned it yourself, the pandemic itself, what happened with COVID, that was trauma to all of us in our own way. We've all experienced that. But we don't really have the avenue of being able to process any of that. The schools haven't really supported or helped the children process any of that. It's the same with the prison services. They're so inundated with, the volume of numbers coming through, managing what's going through, all the different directives that they've got to follow, that as with any industry, mental health always seems to go to the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what we're then faced with is a funding issue, particularly for the public sector, in being able to get these types of support mechanisms. And so, what I'm really hoping we can deliver with this, Hattie, is real actionable, deliverable career development programs across the very different areas, and one of them being, your area of specialty, which is mental health and well-being. So with regards to career development, Hattie, so if we think about the various ways we could deal with this, where it's an ongoing issue, if we draw a line, where would we want to start with this? Would it be to be quite just to, as I say, to break down the stigmas? Are there other areas that we should focus on in terms of, the fact that things have been happening already, we're coming in?
Do you know what? I think there's so many different ways you can start off with it. Definitely through all of anything that I do in terms of any talk that I do is breaking down that stigma, because
Yeah.
we need to be more open. We need to encourage people to be more open. We need to encourage workplaces to be more open. You mentioned yourself earlier about even the hierarchy, young people coming through, students coming through, any industry. That feeling of, if they come out and say, I've got this problem from a mental health issue, that they're going to be scared or concerned that that's going to impact their growth and development in their careers. That needs to be broken down. You've mentioned resilience. Resilience is another one that needs to be broken down. And again, I blame social media and our cultures, really, because any TV program that you watch, anything that you engage with, has got this idea that we've always got to be happy, 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 and everything's got to be great in life for us to feel good. And one thing I say to my clients all the time is, we don't live in a fairy tale world. And even when you watch the fairy tales, Cinderella, Snow White, whatever, they've all got their own battles and difficulties that they're dealing with. However, one tool we can teach ourselves is that with resilience means that we can be happy when we're happy, when the happy times are there. When we do experience those difficulties, we don't need to crumble. We've got the ability to be able to cope with it. And we've got to have the awareness that it too shall pass. It will pass, the difficulty. But it's knowing that we can cope with that difficulty.
Yeah. And
then come
sorry.
the self-esteem. Then comes the self-esteem issue, which I think is a massive thing for people when they're trying to progress in their careers and they're trying to move forward. That voice, that imposter syndrome that tells you can't do this, or that's above you, or you can't beat that door down. That's nonsense. All of them things are just restrictions that we place on ourselves. So how can we overcome them? Through self-awareness, through self-belief, through working on that self-esteem. And these are the kind of subjects that I would like to be covering.
Fantastic. Well, make no mistake, one of the things that one of our goals is self-efficacy. What we want to do is empower the healthcare professionals to take more control of their careers, and this is one of those skill sets. So, self-belief, self-esteem. I mean, particularly challenging around healthcare professionals of, AHPs, allied health professionals, and nursing is that, they're often hospital or a healthcare setting cannot function without the allied health professionals and and nurses and that support network. Yet often they're a neglected profession in terms of their self-development. And so, what we're discussing here, Hattie, is absolutely part of that skill set package of tools that they're going to need, I think, to help them to become more confident and self-aware about their abilities and what they're bringing to the table. One of the things I really want to do through our programs is encourage radiographers and other allied health professionals to think about that skill set that they've got that sits there idly, but that can be of so much value to other people just by giving them the confidence. I mean, that imposter syndrome. I mean, for many years of my career, working as a non-clinical specialist, if you like, of workforce, but working in a clinical environment, was challenging until one of my ex-colleagues, and I'll name and shame her name's Wendy Wilkinson, who I admire deeply, said to me, Buddy, don't ever apologise for not being a radiographer, because I said it in one of my meetings once and she stopped me. And from that moment onwards, Hattie, I never said it again. And so that because I was suffering a little bit with the imposter syndrome, until I realised that actually no, I've got a right to be at this table. And that wasn't an ego thing. It was actually just an experience thing that, if other people thought I was right to be there, why should I have my own self-doubt that I shouldn't be? And that was my own development, if you like. And I think there's a lot of people that are suffering from imposter syndrome across the whole spectrum. So I'd like to be thinking about that as a definite area we can work on.
Yeah, definitely. It does. It impacts so many people in so many ways. And even what you said earlier about the resilience and, saying to people, oh, we've got to toughen up. And again, that's still coming through in schools. I had my 7-year-old, she went to school a couple of weeks ago, was having a bit of a tough time. And the teacher said to her, well, you're in year 3 now. You should be able to cope with this. And it really irritated me because actually, if she'd have just taken a minute to just listen to what she was finding difficult and let her have that sounding board to get it off her chest, she would have overcome it. Instead, what she did was install this belief in her that she's weak and she can't cope, even though she's in year 3.
Yeah,
The
wow.
use of language is so important, and we don't realise the impact that it has and the messages that it's setting for people in their belief system going forward.
Actually, one of my favourite sayings, and those that have heard me speak a lot will know this, so forgive me for those people that are hearing me say this again. But one of my favourite sayings is from Maya Angelou, which is, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you
Yeah,
did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, how they made
yeah,
you feel, and that is, for me, that plays a lot into these scenarios because, they often through ignorance, I'd like to think, people say something, they could think as a throwaway comment, they could have forgotten about it an hour later. It will resonate and it will stick in the minds of people. And particularly at those younger ages, it sits there and it festers like this. And they think, oh, should I say anything again? Or should I, definitely the earlier we can get into the mindset of building that, building those blocks of confidence along the way, those experiences. I think that the more healthier leaders we're going to find in the future, right?
definitely. And it's just having that open space, what's happening, what's going on for you, listening to people within your team, within your department. Because, I've said this before on one of the talks that I did with you previously, in terms of if we have an open forum where someone feels comfortable enough to be able to say, I feel like this, you'll be surprised how many people in the network would come forward and say, oh my God, so do I. And then before you know it, you've got a shared problem that people can lean on each other for and get support through and work through together.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think one of the big concepts we've got here is we're building a community. And over
Yes.
time, Hattie, this community is going to support each other. We're going to find solace in each other. We're going to find ways to pull each other through in various ways. So, for me, the support network is a community that we're building. I'm absolutely delighted that you're part of it. And I'm very, very excited for what I think we can do, in all of the work that you're doing with Omnia Health, and we can bring this to the forefront. Hattie, we are doing really well for time, actually, which is surprising for me because I can talk a lot. I was going to ask, have you got...
We've both been in our best behaviour today, Foddy, because we're both known for liking to talk.
we both interview people, Hattie. We're used to asking lots of questions. Have you got anything more you would like to add about the impact you'd like to bring as part of this career development service for L&D Companion?
Do you know what? I don't even know where to start or where to finish. It's just a really exciting prospect. As you said, even the idea of being part of this community where we can encourage that internal support, we can work on those different subject matters that we spoke about earlier, bringing that awareness of how our mental health impacts us, ways in which we can help ourselves, ways we can support each other, and just changing attitudes, really. I think, and then seeing how people can grow and develop as a result of those changing attitudes is a really exciting prospect.
100%. And I agree with all of that, particularly the last point, to think where we could start this and where it takes us and the journey that we're going to go on with this, Hattie. And then I think also the people on the program can go with this as well. I'm really, really excited about it. And I hope as we go along, we're going to really sort of unravel some really, really impactful arms of what we're trying to achieve here. So thank you very, very much. Delighted to be working with you on this. And for all of those that are going to be joining, I can't wait to get started with the L&D Companion. Hattie and all of the other speakers, we're going to be sort of getting going very, very soon. So watch this space. Hattie, thank you very much. And we'll speak soon.
No, thank you. Yes, take care.
Thanks, Hattie.